All right, welcome back to BBI. It's good to be back here. We're going to have our last lesson for the year. Tonight we're going to be looking at intervals, and next week, for those of you in Nebraska, class next week will be an hour set aside for you to just simply do your exam that I will be sending out there. So you'll just separate out individually and take your exam. It will be open book, but that'll be an exam for the entire year that we've done up until this point. Tonight we're going to look at intervals. Intervals would be defined as the distance between two pitches. It's that simple. All pitches are measured in intervals. You've heard the term thirds, sevenths, fifths, etc. These are all referring to intervals. A unison is also an interval, meaning that the two notes are on the same space or the same line. A C that the soprano is singing, and if alto is singing a C also, that is called unison. They are together. They are one. A second would indicate that the note is the second note above the first. So if you're on C, a second to C would be D, because it's the next note or the second note in the scale. Okay? A third would indicate that is the third note. You see how the pattern goes? It's the third note in the scale above where you started. The pattern continues all the way through the seventh, and when you reach the eighth, it is called an octave. Just like an octopus has 8 legs, an octave has 8 notes. When you go from A to A, or C to C, when you count the scale properly, that's 8 notes. From A to A or C to C, that is an octave, okay? On occasion, in some songs, in some arrangements, you'll see that it calls for the pianist to play a ninth. And I have seen as many as a 13th before, which is insane because you have to be from a really strange country to be able to stretch your hand that far to play a 13th. However, I have seen arrangements that have called for people to sing 13th, so that's why they get by with it. Obviously, a ninth would be you figure the octave and go up a note. So from C, go up an octave to the next C to the D would be a ninth. So from C, an octave above, to the D would be a ninth. So that's the way the pattern works. It's very self-explanatory, very easy to understand. So turn to your first worksheet. This worksheet is going to deal with seconds, okay? So just to remind you, an interval is the measure of a distance between two notes. So to know the exact size of an interval, you must count the number of notes from the first note to the last note. Seconds always move from a line to a space or a space to a line. So if you're looking at C and it is going to be D, it's the line directly above it, you know because it's just going from space to line, that is a second. It's very simple. It's not complicated at all. If you move from a space to a line in sequence, space, line, space, etc., from space to line or line to space, that's a second. That's going from note number 1 in the scale to note number 2 in the scale, okay? So in the following activity, there's some examples for you there of what seconds look like going up and going down. In the following activity, you're going to write seconds up and down from the printed note in the treble and the bass clef. Then you're going to label the two notes with the correct alphabet letters. So, first one that you see there in the treble clef section, what note is that? D. Thank you very much. That is a D. So what we want to do is we want to figure a second that goes up and a second that goes down. Okay? So for the treble clef it says to find the seconds that go up. So you need to label in the box below that D that it is a D. Then because it wants to find the second up from D would be E. Very good. So draw you a whole note on the first line of the treble clef, which is E for every good boy does fine. And make sure you write D and E down in those boxes underneath the corresponding notes. So for the remainder of the treble clef exercise there, figure the second up. So the second one that you see there, that's an F. So find the second that goes up from F and do the treble clef. And then you'll go to the bass clef and figure the seconds going down. So it's the same thing, just in reverse. Make sure you label your notes there. Good luck. I'm sorry, we're Christians. We don't believe in luck. God's blessings. I'm not pagan. It's just a force of habit. Please, if you don't understand, raise your hand and I'll come to you and help you. Remember your bass clef lines, those are going down. Don't get caught up in the seconds up. Your seconds are down in the bass clef line in this exercise. I'll give you another minute to work on that one.
So you're saying if you're going down, you're going down a note.
Yes. So that first one in the bass clef is a G, so you'd go down to the next line, which is an F, and follow suit from there on out. About 30 seconds, we'll move on. Okay, next page. So, if we do seconds, we're going to follow the pattern and go right into thirds. Now, seconds is not something that you're going to find very often, and here's why. A second makes what we call a clash. A second from C to D, when you play it together, doesn't sound too pretty. So you're not going to see a lot of seconds. You will see them, but they'll always have a resolution to them, where you would probably be going when you would resolve down a little bit, okay? Most of the time you're not going to see that. So thirds are a lot more common, and we will see those a lot because it creates the first half of a major chord. So a third from C would be C, the second would be D, the third would be E. So C and E makes a nice pretty note, nice pretty chord, okay? That's called a third. So that's what we're going to work on this next worksheet. Thirds. If your note is on a space, the third is going to be on the next space above if you're going up, or the next space below going down. If you're on a line, it's going to be on the next line up or the next line down. It's that easy. It's that simple. You know that it's a third if you're looking at the first line, which would be an E, and going up, your third would be the next line, which is a G. Every good boy does fine, okay? So, just like the last one, your treble clef, we're going to work on thirds going up, and the bass clef, you're going to work on thirds going down. So, let's do the first one together. The first note, just like it was in the last exercise, your first note is a D. So, since the D is a ledger space, going up is going to be on a space as well, and the next space above the D is an F. So, D to F is a third. Now, if you were in the key of D, would the F be a natural or would the F be a sharp?
Natural. Had 50-50 chance.
You had 50-50 chance. It would be sharp if you was in the key of D, because D has two sharps, C sharp and F sharp. But that's not what we're studying tonight. But just do that. We're not going to worry about, we're just worried about the correct alphabet letter. We're not worried about the being diatonically correct, okay? So do your bass and your treble clefs there, and I'll let you know when it's time to move on. If you have questions, please raise your hand. Man, I'm telling you, ever since I turned 30, my left shoulder has done nothing but hurt. It's terrible. I mean, I'm sitting here worried to death, thankful I've got health insurance now, because I'm like, great, am I going to have rotator cuff surgery because I hit the 3-0?
It's the same one.
And I only deliver the mail part-time. I can imagine what those old folks that have been doing it for 30 years are going through. Probably got bursitis and everything else in there. Who knows? About another minute and 15 seconds for you. Thirty seconds. Okay, turn the page. Now we're going to look at fourths. Fourths. Now the way to remember and to be able to recognize you're looking at a fourth, like when we're doing seconds, you would have to move up or down from a space to a line or a line to a space. If it's on a space and the other note's on a space, it can't be a second. It's impossible. So from space to line or line to space, either way, it has to go move up one. Thirds, we know if it's in a space, the next note has to be in a space if it's a third. Or if it's a line, it's got to be on a line in order for it to be a third. A fourth, you're going from a space to a line or a line to a space, but there's a gap between them. If you're starting on, like for example here we see C in the bass clef going up to an F, that is a fourth. And notice that you have a line and a space in between. That's how you know that you're looking at a fourth, because there will be a line and a space. It's either going to be a space and a line or a line and a space, but either way, it's those two things will be in between the two notes, and that's how you know you have a fourth, okay? So they'll never be on the same, they'll never both be on spaces or both be on lines. It's one or the other, okay? So go ahead and do your treble clef and your bass clef exercises there. Treble clef goes up, bass clef goes down. I'll do the first one with you if you want me to. The treble clef, first note, again, just like the others, are D. A fourth up from the D would be to the G, the second line of the treble clef, because there has to be a line and a space in between the two. And because D is on a ledger space, we know the next note has to be on a line. So it is D up to the second line, G. That's your first fourth interval. And that would sound like this. And it makes a decent chord. It doesn't sound bad. So you will see fourths from time to time. Not as often as thirds, but you will see fourths. All right, turn the page. Now we're going to look at fifths. Fifths go from a space to a space or a line to a line. When you look at them, if you're starting on a space, notice your example there in the bass clef with the, is that an octopus? I guess that's an octopus. I think so. I'm really not sure what that is, but anyway, in the bass clef, your first example gives you from a C to a G. It is a fifth because they're both on spaces and there's a space in between. What interval would that space in between that C and that G be called? That would be a third because it is also on a space. When you have C and G, that's a fifth. When you add the third in between them, it makes a C major chord. Okay? When you add the C and the octave above, that's what it sounds like. It makes a major chord. So when you add your third, your fifth, and octave in, that's how you get a full major chord. So if you're starting on a line, you will end up on a line, and always look for the line that will be in between, perfectly proportioned between. If you're going from a space, you will end up on a space, and perfectly in the middle there will be a space. Okay? So work on your fifths in the same format. We'll do the first one together again. It starts on D. So D, since it's on a ledger space, we know we're going to end up on a space. So there has to be a space in between. So we're going to land on A, which is the second space of the treble clef. Because the third from D would be F. So D, F, and A make, actually it would be D, F sharp, and A. That would make a D major chord. However, for the sake of the exercise, the note letter would be D, F, A. Okay? So the fifth is D to A. Good luck. I mean, God's blessings. I gotta fix that. Still got about a minute and a half. Okay, turn the page. Alright, so this one, before we do this one, this is going to get you ready for your homework assignment, which is the interval identification speed test. This exercise here, worksheet number 5, that deals with unisons and octaves and in between, is also throwing in sixths and sevenths as well. Okay? What you need to know is that when you're looking at something that's in unison, remember I told you that they both will fall on the exact same line or on the exact same space. These are the two same notes, so it's unison. When you're looking at an octave, you will have a full stretch of 8 in between. This will be number 1. Then you have space 2, line 3, space 4, line 5, space 6, line 7, space makes 8. Notice that one's a line and one's a space. That's a stretch. If you look at, and you're looking from line to a line, you know you're not looking at a full octave. That's not 8, because if there's 8, they will be alternate. One would be space and line, or line and space. Either way, you have to look at, remember that. When you're calculating sixths, the best rule of thumb that I can tell you is imagine what a fifth would be from this E, which obviously it would be the line because there's a perfect third in between, 1, 3, and 5, and then go up 1. So from here to the space, which would be from E to C, makes a sixth. Seventh would be obviously the line that's just below an octave. Okay? So let's look at this worksheet real quick. But before we do, I want to kind of see what you think about these and if we can guess these real quick. Okay? This first one, going from a C in the treble clef down to an F. What interval is that? What are they both on?
Space.
Both, and there's a perfect
Space.
in between, so it must be a okay? Because this would be the third in here. Okay? So, now from B to D. 1, 2, so that is a perfect third. Okay? Now going from this F down to this G, from G to F or F to G, either way you want to look at it, from here to here, this is a seventh. You're exactly right. Because you can tell it is one short of being a perfect octave. If it was an octave, it would be F to F. Because it's one short, it's only 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 away. So it's a seventh. Now going from a G to a G, which is also a octave. Okay? Now going, this is supposed to be in the space, by the way. From space to line, 1 to 2, that's called a second. Now going from this space to this space, that is a third. Yeah, just like the one above it, except there's lines to lines. Now going from line to line with a in between, that is a fifth. Yes. And last of all, this is an example of unicycle. No, I'm just kidding. Unison, yes. Very good. Okay, now look at this worksheet real quick. Go through this worksheet. See how fast you can do it. Don't worry about the time. But just so you know, this worksheet is to get you ready for the big worksheet that's after it. This interval identification speed test to come is your homework assignment. So what I want you to do is I want you to do worksheet 5, burn through that. Don't spend more. Let's see. I would not waste more than 2 minutes on this one. Okay? Try to get as many as you can done in 2 minutes. And then we'll move on to the identification speed test. So see how far you can get in 2 minutes. Go. By the way, if it's unison, write a U. If it's an octave, write an O. 30 seconds. Time. Raise your hand if you did the whole thing. Good. Raise your hand if you got 3 out of 4 lines done. Like you were on your 4th line getting there done. Okay? How many of you only got your 3 lines done? How many of you only got 2 lines done? How many of you didn't get finished with the first line? Alright. Oh, that's okay. That's okay. That's okay. That's progress. At least you was able to get 1. Yeah, 1.5. There you go. Okay, turn to your interval identification speed test. What you're going to do is I'm going to allow you to do this during class time simply because this is going to take some of you a long time to get it done because there's a lot, and also because you actually have an exam to do for this session as well. And then next week you have your exam for the entire year. So I don't want to overwhelm you. I want you to be able to get this finished. Intervals are something you will use a lot, so you must understand them. Thirds and fifths and sevenths and things like that are not uncommon terms. They are something that are used a lot, and you need to understand that part of the language, okay? So, you have approximately 22 minutes, right at 22 minutes of class time left to work on your interval identification speed test, and if you finish it, you can either leave early or you can go ahead and do your exam, and you can even turn it in if you get that finished in time as well. So, Nebraska, thanks for tuning in. I will be getting this to you. God's blessings to you on it, and be looking forward to next week, our last class of the year. God bless you. Thank you so much.